What's up, guys? I'm BTC. It seems to be finally happening after over a year. It looks like Brigitte has finally fallen. If you're enjoying the video, hit that like button. If you're new, subscribe to get more. Let's get started. The addition of Brigitte to the game has had more of an impact than likely any other character by quite a bit. Sure, heroes like Ana and Orisa have definitely changed things up a bit and have had their own impact, but they didn't quite have that earth-shattering effect that Brigitte has. At the time of Brigitte's release, a version of Dive was just completely crushing everything else in the game. And while Dive has always been strong in previous versions, the rework of Mercy made it just far more powerful than it ever had been. Blizzard decided that they needed to add a character that could function as a direct counter due to this dive. Specifically, Brigitte was meant to counter Tracer, who was at the time almost completely unchecked in the game. Sure, in some circumstances, you could use McCree as a counter to that Tracer, but a lot of the times he was just mostly unviable because the dive comp would use Winston and D.Va and just shut down the McCree entirely. So Tracer could pretty much just do whatever she wanted and deal all the damage to the backline, and there was very little actually stopping her. Now, some of you may like or dislike Brigitte, and I'm not here to argue that point, but very clearly the use of Brigitte is starting to go down, so some of you might be happy about that. In fact, what seems almost unbelievable has already happened, where Torbjorn now has a higher pick rate than Brigitte in some brackets. Had you said that a year ago, I don't think anyone would have believed you. Now, the character isn't going to be literally deleted by Blizzard. I don't think they're ever going to actually delete a character fully from the game. But if Blizzard does continue to nerf the character again and again into obscurity, it's kind of the same effect. And as of the patch yesterday, she got two more fairly substantial nerfs. Both of them have to do with her ultimate rally. The first nerf made it so that the rally effect will no longer go through enemy barriers, which is problematic for Brigitte because unlike many of the other supports, she has to be really up close to all of the enemy players and their tanks, which means that there's a good chance she's going to be on the other side of an enemy barrier at some point. So this is going to prevent some of that rally effect. The other nerf made it so that the rally armor will now prevent a lot less damage than it had been before. More than that, though, the end of Goat's comp is likely what's going to cause Brigitte to plummet down even further in pick rate. I'm sure she'll still get some use in the lower brackets, that's probably never going to go away, but she just doesn't really synergize all that well with bunker comp, and in a 2-2-2 lineup, you're often going to be better off using any other combination of support characters. When Blizzard messes something up, I don't hesitate to point out those mistakes, not because I enjoy it, but because I want the game to be better and I want to see it improve. But in all honesty, I don't know how much blame can actually be placed on Blizzard for just creating the GOATS comp and all of the other problems that Brigitte introduced to the game, because quite frankly, no one saw it coming. And when I say no one, I mean no one. Not me, not any other streamer, not the pro players. No one. No one saw GOATS comp coming and the fact that it would be around for a year. Blizzard saw an issue with dive comp. They introduced the character to try to fix it, and it just ended up creating a much bigger problem in the game. And they tried to fix it over time with nerf and nerf here, nerf there, but it just never kind of really went away until just about now. So it took over a year for this to happen. Now, you could argue maybe they should have just deactivated Brigitte as a character, brought her back into the testing phase, put her back on the PTR, reworked it, rebalanced it until the character could have worked in a better way, that it wasn't just so disruptive to the gameplay. I could see that argument, and that's a perfectly valid one to have. I don't think they wanted to introduce a character and then say, alright, well, now we have to kind of take it back from you. I don't know how well that would have went over. I mean, obviously some people would have liked it, but there probably would have been a lot that didn't like it either. Fact of the matter is, Brigitte was on the PTR for about a month, then went live, and was in the game for 2 months before Goats Comp came around and before the character started actually being seriously problematic. Up until that point, a lot of the frustration revolved around just old playstyles not being as effective, people being a little too aggressive with those dive comps and not being willing to adapt to the fact that they couldn't just go into the back line anymore because now there was a Brigitte there, and they just didn't like that. But the addition of Goats Comp obviously changed all that stuff. After all of the changes that she's had, Brigitte still has some of that anti-dive presence, and you can use it to help defend against an enemy Doomfist or a Hammond, but a lot of that strength is just gone now, particularly against Tracer. Even when Brigitte was initially released, the full-strength version of the character, the best Tracer players could still mostly deal with a Brigitte fairly well. Now, I'm not saying it was super easy or anything, but they did find ways to work around it. They would just kind of keep the correct spacing, and that Brigitte just would never get close enough to use the combo. That problem obviously doesn't exist anymore because now Brigitte can do a full shield combo on you, and Tracer's just gonna either blink away or just rewind and get all that health back. It's not possible for Brigitte to just burst down that Tracer anymore. The problems for Brigitte really begin when Goats Comp finally goes away, or at least mostly goes away. With the patch changes we had yesterday, it made Goats Comp a little weaker. There's no question that Goats Comp triple tank, triple support is dwindling in popularity and strength. It's not going to vanish overnight, but it definitely is losing popularity and it's going down. And because of that, Brigitte is just going to be another one of those characters that kind of gets thrown to the side and forgotten. And while some of you may like that, I don't think it's a good idea to have characters in the game that don't feel useful. I've said the same things about Bastion, Torbjorn, Symmetra, and others. If a character is in the game, then people should feel good about playing that character. It should have usefulness, and it should have a viability in at least, most of the situations. But with all of these nerfs and the changes and the going away of the Goats Comp, Brigitte is just not going to really have a place anymore. So then you have to worry about, well, what about the other stuff, like the potential of a locked roll queue? And I know some of you guys don't like this, and you probably don't want to hear it, but I do think there's a very real possibility of Blizzard implementing a roll queue for the competitive ladder. And if this happens, then she's going to be in a significantly worse position than she is now, because at least with the possibility of the triple tank, triple support lineup, you can use her, but without that, her viability is going to drop drastically. And this means that Brigitte is likely going to have a serious rebalancing or even a possible rework. Even Jeff Kaplan has admitted this when he's talking about the roll queue and the problems that it could bring up, because he said that a character like Brigitte would need to have some sort of serious changes in order to actually be viable in that lock 2-2-2. Because without that triple support, then her usefulness just kind of drops. So there's a lot of possibilities that they could have for these potential changes to Brigitte. The thing that makes Brigitte so strong in the triple support and why Goats Comp is still lingering around even after all the nerfs is her area effect healing. Buffing that without the locked 2-2-2 roll queue would be disastrous, as it would make Goats Comp surge again in popularity and once more be unstoppable. But if they were to change it and have that locked 2-2-2, they could buff that area effect healing quite a bit, because you're only going to be affecting 2 tanks instead of the 3. They could do this in a lot of different ways. They could buff the overall healing amount, they could increase the duration or the range, lots of different possibilities. Other ways would be to make her more focused on single target healing by lowering the cooldown on the repair pack. Although I think if they were to do that, they might also have to lower the total healing in it as well. Otherwise, it might be a little too strong. One thing I don't think they're going to do is re-strengthen her crowd control abilities, specifically the stun. There might be a minor damage increase to the shield bash or to whip shot, but I don't think they're ever going to make that stun any better than it already is, and I don't think they're going to revert the barrier interaction with it either. I'm pretty certain that stuff is here to stay. And again, if they're going to make the character better, they're probably going to do so in the healing aspects as opposed to any of the crowd control. Although there might be some minor damage increases. But if the current trend continues on the decline with goats and the rise of bunker, it does seem quite likely that Brigitte is going to continue falling down further and further on that pick list. So what do you guys think about Brigitte's current state? Did you think this day would ever arrive? Are you happy about it, sad about it? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching, and if you'd like to see more, subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss anything. Also, come hang out in my Discord server and my Twitch live stream. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters. If you'd like to see what kind of cool VIP rewards you can get, check the links down below. And remember, always blame the controller because it's never your fault.